Ladies and gentlemen, good morning, good afternoon, and good evening. Our guest today is the founder of 101 Tokens, Australia's first technology-driven smart drinking program for problem drinkers. Today, he's going to show us how to flip self-sabotage into a strength. Please put your hands together and help us welcome to the Win Sales Now podcast, our good friend, Benny Wellington.
Claps. Thanks, Daniel. Thanks, Nini.
Everybody's gone wild. Crowd's gone wild. Mate, Superman had a weakness. It was kryptonite. Achilles had a weakness and he had a problem with his heel. What has been your weakness over the years?
I'd say my weakness has definitely been my vices, and in particular, my drinking. Not so much now, pretty much cleaned it completely up, but still love a drink. I identified probably at a point when I was in London that I was drinking 5 to 6 nights a week. And that's kind of consistent with a lot of people, especially within the corporate world. And you don't notice that it's an issue until it becomes an issue. And I lost my job. Well, I was working in a startup and we got sued. So there was no more job to be had for anyone at that company by one of the founders. And it's a long story, but I just started a charity with a football club in the Premier League, Southampton FC. So pretty big deal. They're pretty big deals, those clubs over there. And I had all these sponsors waiting on me, and I had this primary school that were doing volunteering. And there I was laying on the couch drinking beers, not doing the work, not working, letting people down. And so I thought something had to change. And so literally the amazing thing about changing your drinking habits and the way I do it, which is through more of a mindful approach, which is not to completely give it up, but just to say, I'm only going to drink this much and then drink. And then when I drink, the next day I say whether it was worth it or not. So there's kind of like a repatterning. I've been doing that for many years now. And the amazing thing about that is, and sort of turning, I guess, kryptonite into gold, to use the Superman analogy, is when you're drinking with purpose, it can actually be a strength because people know that alcohol is literally at its best. It's a great way to connect. It's a great way to sort of let your hair down a little bit after a big week of work. Can be a great way to have better dance moves, you know. But at its worst, it can cause violence. It can cause distress in the work and at home, even death in the worst case scenario. So, I've really gone on a journey to figure out how I can turn that kryptonite into gold. And that's my belief now is working with businesses and entrepreneurs and executives to show them how they can do the same.
I like what you said there about improving your dance moves.
Yep.
If I would have drank more beers, I probably would have had a bit better chance with Nini earlier on, because even after a couple, my dance moves were still no good.
That's true.
You want to impress them some other way.
I understand that for you, this vice for you, drinking 5 to 6 nights a week, it come close to killing you. What's the
I did a couple of really dumb things. I always say when I'm speaking to people, there's 3 different ways that will make you change a habit. And there's feathers. So you get brushed by a feather. Oh, that was a bit rough. So in drinking, you might, wake up with that really horrendous hangover. You might throw up, whatever it was. You feel terrible. You waste the day. Then there's bricks. So you get hit by a brick. That's kind of like, I might end up in hospital. I might lose my job. I might lose my relationship. My kids might just be completely almost disown me just the way that I'm acting. And then you got buses. So if you get hit by a bus, you're dead. And so I think I got hit by several massive bricks at different times through my drinking career, which I kind of, in inverted commas, like to say when I'm presenting. But yeah, I put myself in the hospital a few times. I got arrested a couple of times. And, and those were kind of when I wasn't doing 101 tokens. It was more that I was not reflecting on them. And the way that most people go about their drinking is that they'll say, oh, I'm never drinking again. Oh, I feel horrible. And then come Wednesday, Thursday, they kind of reset the system and they've completely forgotten about it. So the whole point of self-reflection, which I say self-reflection is a muscle, you've got to just keep practicing it. And that's true of anything that we want to improve. You've literally got to sit there in a lot of the time, uncomfort, and then work through how you're going to transition into a healthier human.
You mentioned before the excessive drinking there. The company you're working with, the startup, it fell over and was sued. But then you're also doing some charity work in some roles with football clubs. How did the problem drinking impact those relationships and your ability to produce results?
Yeah, I guess at that point where they were relying on me, I realized that I had to change something right then and there. I was pretty much, like I said, drinking every day. And that project had to go live in February, and this was the 3rd of January. And just through that mindset and accountability, which is pretty much the most important thing, I just wrote a blog, and I was like, the only way this is going to be concrete is if I put it out on the internet and I share it to my close friends. And they were like, whoa, this is pretty interesting. They were like, you're not going to keep to it, because they knew I was that guy. I was the drinker. I was the one who told it, come on, let's go to the pub. Oh, yeah, I know we're hungover. Let's go again. And so without that transition, because I've still got my calendar that I was marking it off, I think I only drank 5 times I only drank another 2 times between that day when I decided to change my habits and delivering that project. And so it was just a real eye opener. It was kind of like I say, like the analogy, me laying on my couch and drinking a beer and spilling it down into my love handle. That was a feather. That was a feather moment. And then all the bricks came flooding back. And I was like, okay, otherwise you're headed for a bus here in one way or another. So how can you change it? And I think we all have the power to change what we do and our habits. And it's just a matter of getting the motivation and hopefully getting hit by softer bricks.
We just read one of your article that you have shared with us about vice optimizations. But if you could just share a little bit insight about what that really are to our audience.
Yeah. So my favorite thing is kind of is disrupting and having a look at status quo and going, well, maybe that doesn't align. And I think we have a tendency when it comes to the word vice to think of it as a negative. And for anyone who's a bit confused, a vice, I guess, is something that brings us pleasure but has a negative outcome for the most part. And so when I was exploring around, like, well, how can we transition people into smart drinkers? How can we transition people into smart eaters? How can we get people to respect their phones? Because your mobile phone can be the portal to like all the information in the universe almost. Well, not really, but a big chunk of it. And it can also be the portal to hell, because we can just get so infatuated, addicted, and that's how it's all set up, right? But if we look at it like, here's the 2 ends of the scale, what are the things that we can put in place to allow us to transition into that vice optimization? Like for me to be really confident and proud, and away from those things like guilt and shame, because we know how detrimental they are. So yeah, I'm on this like vice optimization journey. I've done it with drinking. I've done it with how I eat. I've done it with my clothing. I've done it with my plastic consumption. So I don't know exactly what I'm going to be called to next, but the great thing about the work that I do through alcohol is kind of like alcohol is the gateway for people to understand the mindset around what we do when it comes to vice optimization, which is, in a nutshell, living with intention during the act, accountability and consideration, and then self-reflection. And if you follow those, there's more to it, but they're the basic ones, you'll incrementally improve. And we're not saying that, I want to become a vegan and then tomorrow you're going to just cut out meat and all the stuff that nourishes your body. That's pretty unhealthy to do anyway. But how can you find the right mentors, the right support groups, the right accountability, the right information? How can you, like, we were talking just offline about how kind of the media is a bit poisoned because it's so swayed. So how can we have a good ecology of information where we're looking at different resources before we decide that's the best? So that's kind of vice optimization. There's in a nutshell.
Yeah, it's beautiful.
And with vice optimization, how does that connect with flow? Because you talk about flow. What's flow and how do we get it?
Yeah, flow. You could swap the word out for peak performance. Flow's like pretty big, I guess, in the corporate world. If we're talking about the sense, people are always trying to figure out how they can one up their opposition. But for me, flow is kind of like that internal sense that I'm operating in synergy with my environment
Yep.
And at its peak, people will recognize flow as those moments when time stood still, when, you know, the pen was writing and it didn't even feel like it was you anymore. If you play music, it's that. If you're a surfer or if you're a sports person, it's that feeling of like, I'm here, but I'm not. And you feel your best, and you show up your best. And so I've been infatuated with companies like the Flow Genome Project, who I've now trained with, who study that, and they look at all the different aspects of flow, whether it's like the neurochemistry, whether it's like how spirituality taps into it, the physiology that goes along. And really, I guess the long and short of flow is, it's like, what are you doing in your day-to-day routines? Are you getting the right sleep? Are you eating the right foods for your body? Are you moving? Are you connecting with nature? Are you connecting with other human beings in a way where you know, getting the oxytocin from eyeball to eyeball? Are you having what I would call frothy conversations? And all of those things, which sound like the basics, that's where people are probably not accessing peak performance and flow, because they're not doing the basics. And as we know, in the world we live at the moment, we're all kind of pretty supercharged. We're all upregulated. So there's so many things that you can do to kind of set yourself back to center. And it's from that space that you can find flow.
Yeah, lovely.
For other people, they might call it getting in the zone.
Yep.
And when I was wakeboarding, I was Australian champion, and I remember going out to do my finals run in the Australian titles, and I had busted my ankle. I hadn't ridden for 6 weeks, but I was in flow and I was in the zone. And when I went out and rode, it was like everything was happening in slow motion. The 25 seconds in each direction up and down the lake felt like it went forever. And I'd just ride in and I'd hit the wake, and everything just happened in slow motion. And it was a beautiful feeling to be in that zone. I had it again recently. I was addressing 1,000 business people here in Taiwan, and it was like I was up on the stage, but I was just conducting beautiful music. I wanted the message to go over there, and it was like you could just send it over there and you could see the response. There was no nervousness. You were totally present, and there was no worries. The bill, you weren't thinking about paying the bills. You weren't thinking about, was the car double parked? You're just in that zone, and it's a beautiful feeling.
Yeah,
So
pure presence.
For people who want to learn more about flow and how to optimize their vices, how can they start to follow you, and how can they learn more about 101 tokens?
Definitely. So I've got a website, which is just my name, bennywellington.com. I think you can access introductory calls there if someone wants to have a chat with me. I love having a good chat. 101 tokens is just 101 tokens.
Conversation.
Frothing conversations. Yeah, I've got a podcast called Finding the Frothers as well. So that's, if you want to check out me just yarning with some inspirational people, that's there as well, which you can find through bennywellington.com. But yeah, I'm always up for meeting really cool people and having rad conversations like this one. And I could just sit and talk about flow states and, you know, where people have found it, because interestingly, as you know, Daniel, is like that, you know, you don't need to go out and find that gnarly final to find that feeling again, because you found it again when you're up there conducting. And it's so beautiful that you use that terminology, because in group flow research, they talk about conducting as in, you know, you can be up there, but people know their roles, and there's like this improvisation that happens, and there's synergy, and there's unspoken synergy. And so, yeah, that's great. And so I think with me, with the work I'm doing in flow, I'm really, first of all, you need to unblock the vices, because the vices are jamming us. We're not going to get into flow if we're continually pushing the limits of everything. So it's working on that to start off with. But then it's like, how can we tap back into those moments from a lot of the time when you were younger, even when you're a real young kid? It's like, what were the things that you were doing that you were just completely free and in the moment? And how can we bring them back into the presence, the present moment, and use that as an activator for peak performance and showing up your best, whether it's at work or for your family or for your sporting team or for whoever it is.
Beautiful. Well said, mate. Well, ladies and gentlemen, be sure to follow Benny Wellington. Head over to his website now, bennywellington.com, and go over to 101 Tokens. The website address again, Benny, for 101 Tokens, what is it?
101tokens.com. Yeah.
Okay. And what we'll do is we'll post that in the feed below and make sure you head over and click that link straight away. Benny, thanks for your time, and looks like you're going to go for a surf. The board's waxed up, ready to go.
Mate, probably not today. It's a little bit too big for me. Smashed.
Thanks, mate. Have a great day.
Thank you.